and Princess of Gay. I'm your host, Connie, and today we are here with the final episode, episode 8 of One Piece LA, at least for the first season. It sucks that we are finally at the end, but after yesterday's reaction, after how intense that got, I couldn't leave it there. I had to get to this again today. And I'm very excited to. I'm very excited to get to more. Because even though this is the end, this is going to be like one hell of a confrontation with Arlong. And just probably a final confrontation with Garp. And other than that, I don't really know. I mean, I know there's one scene coming up that we still have to get to. And possibly some setup for next season, but I don't see the Arlong stuff taking more than maybe half this episode. So I'm just curious as to how this is going to be set up. I guess we'll see. But I'm not going to waste any more time because, like I said, last episode was so powerful, so perfect, so impactful that I just want to get to more. I've already mentioned before in yesterday's episode exactly what is replacing this. It's My Little Pony Make Your Mark. We already technically started it yesterday. But yeah, we'll talk in the afterthoughts more about like just how this went, how things maybe could have been better, and where the future goes for this. But for the time being, let's get this going. When the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black, then it fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. I had to take a bit there, because I was just like, I was a mess. I was really a mess there. Perfection. Absolutely perfection. Every little bit, it's just like, this was so damn good. It was so damn good. Not just this episode, this series as a whole. But talking about this episode, the fight with Arlong was as perfect as it could be. Switching between perspectives of Luffy versus Arlong, Sanji, and Zoro taking on the other fishmen, as well as Kurobe, and of course, Usopp versus Chu. And I talked about that in the reaction. Usopp versus Chu is one of Usopp's greatest East Blue moments. In fact, I'd say it is his greatest East Blue moment, and one of his greatest early moments in general. Because Usopp is a coward, and his entire goal is to become a brave warrior in the sea, but he's also the one who you could say has already achieved his goal. Because courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability and desire to do the right thing in spite of it. Which Usopp always does. Usopp, is not ready to accept that he's reached that, but he really already did at this point. So, saying that as his goal, after the fact is, it shows, where his mindset is. And he doesn't consider himself at that point yet. But what he did here was so brave and courageous. It was so exceptional. Him standing up to Chu and taking him on and defeating him, even though no one saw and no one might believe, it's still great to see. The fight with Kurobe, there wasn't any of the underwater stuff, and because Zoro and Sanji were kind of working together, it was a lot different. But again, not in a bad way. The underwater stuff, I feel would be really hard to properly portray. We did see a little bit of Kurobe swimming underwater, but the actual fighting and stuff under there, It's like in live action, that would just be very difficult. But the fight we got still, nonetheless, was great. And yeah, it was about half the episode, what I expected. Then we had Garp and the Marines come in while everyone was celebrating. And after a small fight between Garp and Luffy, in which Luffy cannot win, because Garp is a vice admiral and he's way too strong. Luffy is not anywhere near strong enough to take him on at this point. After that quick fight, it's revealed that all of this was Garp testing Luffy. That he knew he was never going to convince Luffy to stop, but that he wanted to make sure he was ready. And this very much fits with Garp. Garp doesn't have the heart to actually, arrest or kill Luffy. He loves that little shit. He very much does. And there's points in the series, I won't go into specifics because of spoilers. There's a specific point, especially where he does try, but he can't bring himself to do it. And it's like, yeah, it shows, we see a lot of that here. And that Garp it's like he's not actually looking to confront Luffy for the purpose of stopping him, but he wants to make sure he's ready for the Grand Line. He wants to make sure that he understands what he's getting himself into. And so he tests him. And luckily it all works out. I do love, though, that Kobe and Helmeppo both stood up to Garp in that moment, and he even acknowledged and appreciated that. He saw them as following their justice, which is something Garp definitely would believe in. Which has already kind of been gone into. Like, Garp has mentioned that he has turned down the promotion to Fleet Admiral because he didn't want to, operate under their rules and stuff. So it's like, yeah, you can kind of see that he actually likes people standing up for what they believe is right. So we see him leave, and he ends up agreeing to take on Kobe and Helmeppo as direct trainees. And we see, what basically their goals are, which I don't think was in the manga and anime, but I might be wrong. I don't think there was a direct specific goal set for each of them. I believe Kobe just wanted to be the best Marine he could in general, and Helmeppo ended up eventually siding with him on that. But here, we see that Kobe's goal specifically is to be strong enough to defeat pirates in the same vein as Luffy, or even stronger. And Helmeppo's goal is to be as good of a swordsman as Zoro, to show that he's not the only great swordsman out there. Or Mihawk, I guess, could be considered too. So I like that we have some more distinct goals for these characters. I feel like if we do see some of this, we're going to see both Garp and Bogard training them. I think it's going to be pretty good to see. Now, speaking of Mihawk, we do see him in this episode, because Kobe, before leaving the Konomi Islands, visits Luffy and gives him his first wanted poster. Instead of the crew getting this delivered by a news coup on the ship, this is how it's received this time. And Luffy, of course, is ecstatic for it, and we see the reactions of all these characters we've met along the season, and how they react to it, from Kaya to Zeph and so on and so forth. But the big ones, obviously Buggy sees it and vows revenge on Luffy, especially because Luffy's bounty is higher and Buggy has an ego. But we also see Alvida there, and it's like, oh yes, the bonds are forging. If you know, you know. And we see at the very end, and I'll get back to the other stuff before, but we see the tease at the very end, a certain Marine captain in Logetown has also gotten word. Captain Smoker. And it's like, oh, this is just so hyped to see that. to see that tease. It's so good. It's so good. It's like when they were fading to it, it's like I'm wondering at first what's going on, but then it's like it's focusing on the smoke around, and I'm like, Smoker would be next. Lobetown would be next. So it's like it clicked in my head pretty quickly what that meant. It's like, I was so hype. But after everything and all, we do see that Nami has changed her tattoo. Like I said in the reaction, it is a bit disappointing that the tattoo isn't connected to Genzo as well, because in this, Genzo didn't have the pinwheel. In the original material, the pinwheel was a thing for Genzo, not Belmare. He wore a pinwheel on his hat to entertain baby Nami. It made her like him. And eventually he ended up becoming like a father figure to her. So Nami's new tattoo was the pinwheel for him and the tangerine representing her mother Belmare. Basically a symbol of the adoptive parents that she had in Kokoyashi Village, who gave her the opportunities and courage to follow her dreams eventually, after the entire shit with Arlong was solved. So it's a little disappointing, but it's not, it doesn't ruin anything. It doesn't ruin the episode. It doesn't ruin the series. Like, the idea is still there. It's still very clear she cares for the entire village. It's still very clear that Genzo and them care for her. All of that is still there. It's just, again, they didn't have as much time in this to really give every single detail. And there's some stuff they just had to cut. Some stuff they had to take out. It doesn't ruin it. It's just, you kind of wish it was there, you know? But the big moment was the casting off ceremony. And while there's still one more place in the East Blue to stop at before they head to the Grand Line, the casting off ceremony is still a big, important part for the series. And it's obvious why the cast and crew of this Netflix adaptation wanted to include this at the end here. It's a big deal. Normally it's during like a nighttime scene, stormy seas. They switched around a lot of the times of a lot of scenes in this series, which isn't an issue, it's just notable. But seeing them all pledge their goals, like, would have been extremely emotional and brilliant on its own, but intercutting that with clips of their younger selves saying the same goals, it broke me. it absolutely broke me. And there was one more person, well, more than one, but one more focus for people who saw the bounty poster. Now, I wanted to end on this specifically, because this is kind of a massive deal. We see Mihawk again, and he brings Luffy's bounty poster to the red-haired pirates, to Shanks, Lucky Roo, Ben Beckman, Yasopp, Rockstar, all of them. And they celebrate with some drinks, excited to see that their boy has made it. It's a great moment that really feels well built up to, well earned, and also sets up a lot for the future and a lot of ideals and goals for where this series is going. It's a really big deal, and it's just fantastic to see in general. This series as a whole impressed the shit out of me. It not only showed that an anime adaptation, when given effort and love by people who, care about the series, as well as working directly with the original creator, it not only shows that it can work, but can actually work excessively in spades. this was not just great, not just amazing. It was a phenomenon. Better than it had any right to be. In a lot of ways, it improved on the original. And maybe in some ways it's not as good. But at least most of the way, it's on equal footing. I would genuinely say that this is as good as the original source material. It just in a different way, just in a different handling of it. And that's fine. It's like even the best of adaptations like this, you can't really say are as good. I know this is going to seem like a weird out there comparison, but have you ever read the book or seen the movie for Holes? The movie is starring Shia LaBeouf, and it's a great movie that adapts things really well and is just really well acted and directed and everything, written. But as good as it is, it doesn't stand up to the book. The book for Holes is still so much better. And that's something you could say for most things. When a book is adapted, when an anime is adapted, a video game, it's like, even for the absolute best of them, the original source material is pretty much always better. So the fact that I can genuinely say that this adaptation is as good as the original source material, the manga or the anime, at least for the East Blue Saga, is an exceptional thing to see here, to believe. It's honestly shocking to me that I think that. But I want to express this in a chart, in a tier list of why I think certain things were maybe not as good or better. So I made a tier list as I was watching along of the different characters in this and whether and how I think they were portrayed. I'm going to spoil you right off the bat, there was not a single bad portrayal. Not a single one. But there were some that were lesser than others and some that were better than others. And so I'm going to show you this tier list here. So, we start off with the meh, and all we have in this is Don Krieg. These are the performances that just were meh, that didn't really have any impact, that were just kind of there. And it makes sense for Don Krieg because he wasn't an important character in this. He wasn't a main villain. He was taken out by Mihawk early. And some say that's probably a good thing, and I do too, but it makes the character less impactful, if we're being honest. So we move up from there, though, to the good tier. This is a tier of casting decisions that were good. Not great or anything, but good. As you can see here, we have young Usopp, Kabaji, Bankina, and Makino. Now, these ones, none of them really stood out. They weren't, like, exceptional or anything, but I wouldn't call them meh either. It's like they were good, they just weren't as good as they could have been. Makino was a little too stone-faced half the time. I feel like she was... Makino in the series, in the manga and the anime, is a lot more friendly, and this one seemed a lot more serious. Which is fine, and it served the role perfectly, and the actor did well. But it's just like, I like her being a little more friendly, especially towards especially towards Luffy and the red-haired pirates. Young Usopp just didn't have much going for him. Like, there wasn't a lot to those backstories, so same with Bankina, and Kabaji didn't really get to show off his fighting skills and everything, so it was kind of a little bit of a waste, I feel. Not a lot, not like terrible waste, but yeah. But above good, We have the category for not as good but still great. These are characters who are not as good as in the manga and anime, but are still great in their portrayal. I put Mr. Seven here, even though this Mr. Seven is not in the manga or the anime. Which, honestly, thinking about now, like, it makes no sense, because, again, you can't compare the portrayals, but I also don't feel comfortable just putting him in good. He was great in his performance, so having him at the bottom of this tier at least works a little more. His performance was great, as small as it was. He did a fantastic job and really sold his character, being a part of Baroque Works and everything. But above that, we have Genzo, we have Kuina, and young Luffy. All of them were great. They're not as good as they're portrayed in the anime or manga, but still great. Genzo, again, just didn't have as much focus, not as much depth to him as in those, but he still deserves to be really showcased for how good he was portrayed by this actor. Kuina, kind of the same. It's like a lot of her depth and anger at the way she's looked down on because of being a girl, and a lot of her frustration at her feelings towards growing up to be a woman and being weaker than men in her eyes. There's a lot more to it in the manga and anime that makes it feel more powerful and more intense. And I just don't think it was gone through as well here as it could have been. But again, the actress still did a great job. And young Luffy, just not as high energy and fun as he is in the manga and anime. And that's just my only real issue there. But yeah, still great. We also have, and I'm not going to go through every single one of these in excruciating detail, Mary, Anton Morgan, and Alvida. Alvida, hard to get that kind of character right in live action because it's like you're looking at a character who in canon is like designed to be super fucking ugly, and so it's like it's weird. It's a little weird when you cast an actress as beautiful as her to portray this character. So they had to change a lot about like her motivations, and like instead of saying who's the most beautiful woman on the seas, they say powerful. Because obviously they're not going to call her ugly. That would be extremely rude and just not okay. Morgan just wasn't as intimidating as in the original. That's my big issue. And Mary just felt like he was just there in this version. He didn't have as big of a role. Plus the fact that he didn't survive also takes out some of the end of the arc stuff for him that made him continue to be great. But again, all of these are still great. Higuma the Bandit was a little cut down in this, and the actor did a great job, but it just didn't quite match the fearsomeness and violence of the original. Kaya just, again, great performance by this actress, just didn't quite match what she, how she was portrayed in the manga and anime. Wasn't quite there, but for what she did was great. It was very different in some ways too. And Zeph, they just didn't give enough time. There wasn't enough time to give for him to really flesh him out a lot more, and that's why he's in the not as good, but still great tier. And when I say still great, I mean these are pretty much all 8 to 9 out of 10 performances. In fact, I would say all of them are at least, I'd say at least 8.5. I wouldn't even go lower than that. But then we get into the tier for as good as the original. These are characters who I think were literally just as good as they were in the original manga or anime. So on the bottom here, you can see we have Ben Beckman, Kurobi, and Chu. The Fishmen, they were pretty much spot on. It's like, really, I couldn't imagine them being done better. Ben Beckman, yeah, it just felt like Ben Beckman to me. Like, I just don't see him being portrayed any better for what we got. Nojiko was just as good in the original. Obviously done a little differently in this version, as I've mentioned, but still just as good for what her portrayal was. Young Zoro, fantastic, just as good in the original, but aged up a little more. His portrayal was a little different because of that. As was Helmeppo's. Helmeppo's was a little different, but for him, it was because they gave more time to developing him, to developing his relationship with Kobe. So it allowed for a lot more room to breathe, and a lot more for him to actually really become where we know he goes. I know that was terrible wording, but young Sanji, Belmare, and Lucky Roo. Not much I'm going to specifically say about all three of them, but again, all three of them were as good as the original, even if they didn't necessarily have as much screen time due to the short amount of episodes and stuff. But all of them did a fantastic job. Kobe, Young Nami, and Kuro were all fantastic. Kuro was actually even more menacing in this, although there are a couple things that were obviously cut that keeps him from, in my opinion, being better than the original, but he had the potential to be. The actor did phenomenally. Young Nami, just as good easily, and Kobe, like Morgan Davies, no one could have portrayed Kobe better. He is like perfect for Kobe. He is absolutely spot on at every single point. It's like he is Kobe. Like absolutely. It's like it's almost 1-to-1 in how Kobe he is. Yasopp, Gold Roger, and Arlong, yeah, they were all just really spot on with how they were portrayed. All of them felt exactly like the characters. Arlong even got to do the classic laugh that he's known for in the anime. Roger was exactly like you'd expect him to be at the at Lobetown there, and Yasopp just fantastically smooth with those shots. We have obviously Zoro, Mihawk, and Shanks here. Three fantastic portrayals that were just as good as the original. A lot of people complain about Zoro being too stoic and everything in this, and one, he does show emotion plenty. It's just not as vibrantly, for lack of a better word that I can think of right now, as in the manga and anime, because, you know, real life. But also, him being a little more stoic sometimes isn't a bad thing. It works for Mackenyu, and honestly, it works for this series. It feels natural. It feels a lot more natural than if he tried to inject some kind of, like, larger-than-life personality in there. Shanks, like, yeah, it's like, that's just Shanks. It's just Shanks. And same with Mihawk. Both of them were just, that's just them. This is exactly their characters, just brought to live action. It's just like Kobe. It's a perfect 1-to-1, pretty much. Nami, Usopp, and Luffy, just as good. Obviously, they're a little different than their manga and anime counterparts, but the differences, again, aren't bad. And the characters, the way they're portrayed, the way the actors portray them, just as good as the original. Especially with Nami in these last episodes, it's like, oh my god, again, with last episode and the screaming and the rage at Arlong was so perfect. Usopp and Luffy also were just fantastically acted here. They just felt like themselves. They felt exactly like these characters that I've known and loved for, like, over 2 decades. Well, okay, not over 2 decades for me. It's not been that long for me. Almost 2 decades for me. Over 2 decades is more how long the series has been out overall. But then we get into the ones who are better than in the original. The ones that actually, I believe, improved from where they were in the original series. And we start with Bucci, Sham, and, not in that order, Sham, Bucci, and Bogard. All three of these were vastly better because they got more character. In the original, the Meowbin brothers, as they are in the manga and anime, are very much non-characters, if we're being honest. They don't really have much going for them. They're just there because two cat-looking members of the crew to fight Zoro and stuff. In this, they actually have personality, they have character. Having Sham be a girl in this one was actually a really good decision and allowed for a different dynamic that expanded upon their relationship a lot more. I feel like they just had a lot more personality and character to them than they ever did in the manga and anime. And Bogard, he's there more. He is there more in this series than he is in the entirety of the manga and anime. And it's a little wild to think about. But he has more character and personality. You get to even see little expressions he makes, during the part where the Marines are at the Baratier and everything, asking about Luffy and all. You see his reaction when Zeph brings up Roger, and it's you get so much emotion just from an expression. It's great. Buggy, Sanji, and I almost said Zeph. Buggy, Sanji, and Garp. Much better than in the original. Buggy, I like Buggy in the original, but I'm not as big of a Buggy stan as a lot of people are. But in this live action series, no, I'm a Buggy stan. Jeff Ward perfected this character. He is just so much funnier, so much better, so more menacing, more interesting, more just everything than in the manga and anime. And again, I'm mostly counting for the East Blue stuff, the East Blue saga, because Buggy does remain a character past that, but it's just I see Buggy, I see Jeff Ward's Buggy being just as good in later parts as well. Sanji is one of those characters I mentioned in the previous videos who has one massive fatal flaw in the manga and anime, being his perversion. That's completely removed from this. He's still a ladies' man. He's still a flirt, which is fine. That's fine as long as he's not a creep about it, like he was in the manga and anime. And he's not in this. And it comes across as feeling more suave and gentlemanly. And honestly, Taz Skylar is, let's be honest, really freaking hot. And I wouldn't deny him. Did you see those abs? Yeah, but anyway, even beyond just attractiveness and everything, he just felt like he improved upon Sanji from what we get in the manga and anime. He improved on his character traits, on his personality, on his just everything, really. His connection with Zeph in some ways, even though we didn't get to see a lot of it in this. It was so exceptionally well done. And then Garp, I believe I mentioned before, but Garp in the manga and anime, I have issues with. He's not a perfect character. He has a lot of issues as a character, and I feel like he could have been handled a little better. This portrayal is pretty much Garp perfected, just like with Buggy, and even Sanji. It's just this is what Garp should have always been like. He feels more controlled and more believable. The Garp in the manga and the anime felt a little too silly at times, and I just didn't believe that a character like him, even as strong as he is, was a vice admiral. There's a lot of times where I questioned that, especially with some of the shit that he would do, especially earlier on in the series. But this Garp, I fully believe, is a vice admiral. This Garp, I fully believe, is as respected in the world of in this world of pirates and marines as you would think. It's he's just perfect for the role. And that's it. That's all the characters really to focus on. There's some other minor characters in this, season, but these are all the focused major characters, and or close to major, and what I thought of them compared to the manga and anime. But like I said, this is only the first season. We've got a second season confirmed, and the crew are definitely planning for more. So I'm excited to see where this goes. I'm excited to see what we do in the future. Obviously, we have a lot of great stuff coming up with Logetown, Reverse Mountain, Whiskey Peak. We have Little Garden, Drum Island, Alabasta. All of that could possibly be in the next season, but they definitely need to have a higher budget, which I 100% believe they will. Just because of how well this did. And they have to have, I would say at least 2 more episodes. If they're going to get to Alabasta in the next season, they have to have at least 2 more episodes. Because if they're going to have Logetown, Reverse Mountain, Whiskey Peak, Little Garden, Drum Island, and Alabasta, that's 6 arcs. And a couple of them you could do like 1 episode each or whatnot. But yeah, you need at least 10 episodes to portray that. To portray it as properly as you can, you need at least 10 episodes, I would say. But we'll see how it's done when that eventually comes. They have to wait till the strikes are over to even begin working on it. They've got the plans already, they just have to wait. And I'm excited for when that does eventually come. They said like 12 to 18 months after the strikes end is when they should be able to get it out. So yeah, hopefully these strikes end. Hopefully these actors and writers start being paid fairly as they deserve, and we can get to more awesome stuff in the future. But I would definitely love to hear your thoughts. Tell me what you thought of this episode and the entire season as a whole in the comments below. How do you think this stacked up to the original manga and or anime? And as I stated before, we are just switching straight into My Little Pony Make Your Mark Chapter 5. We have already begun with episode 15 yesterday, and this is just taking over that slot altogether. So everything will continue as normal from here out, and you bet your ass when season 2 does eventually come, we will be reacting to it. So for the time being, thank you so much for tuning in, and for now, I'm Connie and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.